You're listening to the Classic Gamers Guild podcast.
This makes my nipples hard.
Hey there, and welcome to the show. Today we're going to talk about a subject that Paul was super duper excited about, almost as excited as our guest today. Our guest today is Jason Mical. And am I pronouncing your last name right?
It's actually Mical. Yeah,
Michael,
like the boy's name. Yeah, it's
I've
okay.
been wondering
everyone.
that for ages.
It's all good. It's all good. Everyone says it wrong, so don't sweat it.
Jason Mical is here.
Hello.
And he's here to talk with me and at Paul about the Quest for Glory series, because I guess you're a little bit of a fan. Hey, Jason?
A little bit, yeah. I loved the games when I was growing up, and then when I did grow up, I said, you know what? We need a gigantic book about these games. And so I wrote one.
You're not the only one who thought so, though. We've got Stephen Eamon. He was like, we need a gigantic book about everything to do with the merch and everything around the games, too. So, yeah, it's a popular series. And hey, Paul, nice to have you here today. I've heard that you've kind of had experience with these games. You've worked a bit with the Coles, and you've, played them a little.
Yeah, and I can't believe you rudely interrupted me scrolling through Reddit. That was messed up. I'm just trying to enjoy myself over here. I've perused the games a long time ago, but I've never gone through them. And Anna just never let me forget that. Look, everybody, this is pretty much all I might be saying this episode, so just bear with me as I say it. I can't wait to play them. I mean, I have waited, so that's maybe a weird thing to say, but I'm excited to play them, and I did work with the Coles. I did music for Hero U Summer Days, and so check that out or whatever. And then that's all. Fantastic. Well,
solid start, man.
Here, let me do some host duties. Okay, and then I'll hand it over to you, Anne, because I know you actually have a game plan, and I'm shooting from the hip here, but. Why don't we start first with Jason and then to Anna with your introduction, your origin story with the Quest for Glory series?
Sure. So I first was introduced to Heroes Quest, as it was originally known. I had a friend who lived up the street from me when I was about 10, 11, 12 years old, and he had a really nice computer, probably a 286. But he had a really like a 20 meg hard drive and an ad-lib sound card. And we would play games on his computer, and it was good times. And I went over one day and he's like, you've got to come in and see this new game I got. And it was Heroes Quest. And we sat down, and I can't even remember how much time passed. And I went home and pretty much came up with a plan to get my parents to get me my own copy of the game for my Tandy 1000, which not quite as nice as Nick's computer, but it got me through Heroes Quest, and then again and then Quest for Glory 2 when that came out later. So yeah, and it was pretty much that was it. Like, I was hooked literally from the first moment I sat down and played the game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great start with the series, actually. That's pretty awesome. And to find it at a friend's house and to have to convince your parents to buy it. Like, you went on an adventure just to get to the adventure.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it was cool because I have said I still have that box somewhere. I went home 3 months ago to my parents' place, and I had actually thought originally it was destroyed in their attic at one point, and it looks like that actually was what happened. I thought maybe I'd actually set it aside, but it's unfortunately gone. I tore their attic apart looking for it and couldn't find it. So yeah, but I would carry it around at school. Like, I was king of Heroes Quest there for quite a while. So,
that is the best line. That should be a t-shirt, King of Heroes Quest. And it would have been called Heroes Quest, right? When you originally played it then? That's the version you had, right?
It was, yeah. Yeah, it was... I mean, I actually think I have backup files, like, of my floppy disks from that era that have carried through, like, being burned onto CDRs, going onto external hard drives, and now they're somewhere on my Google Drive. And I'm reasonably certain I had version 1.0 of the game. So.
See, there's something you'd care about, Paul. The version,
Right?
Huh?
Yeah. No. Hey. That reeled me back in.
I do. I have a plethora of versions of Hero's Quest and Quest for Glory, thanks to Paul. So
Nice.
So yeah, my experience was my dad, like with every other game I played, he just brought it home one day shortly after it came out and said, "Here's a game you might like." And so I came up with a whole strategy, and I was like, okay. And I did some thinking, and I was like, I'm going to play through as the fighter first, and then I'm going to play through, because he's the easiest and he's a hack and slash, and even the book says it made the most sense to do it that way. And then the second time I played it as the magic user, because magic. And then the third time I played it as a thief, so I could finally see all the areas that I hadn't seen in the game previously. And it was a little bit more complicated to me, because you had to do more sneaking, and you couldn't just hack and slash your way through it, and had slightly different storylines. So I remember playing through it all 3 times and just getting to know it so well. I didn't even know about hybrid characters or anything else until later. So yes, I do have my original Hero's Quest, the first box, and I've got that one signed by Corey and Lori. But Ryan Fenn in the Classic Gamers Guild helped me get some of the other ones in the series. Like my purple box and my white box came from him as well, and my version of the second one. So anyways, the point is, I played it. I loved it. I was hooked, and every other game ever since then somehow pales in comparison. I still go back and play the series quite often.
Awesome. Yeah, I have. I play it. I mean, even before I wrote the book, I played it maybe about once a year, and it's actually gotten better since I've had younger kids, because they'll watch me play and sort of play with me sometimes, which is super cool. And yeah, what you said is exactly right. Like every other game I've played since has paled in comparison. Like it's
true.
you can see the DNA of Hero's Quest and Quest for Glory and so many other things that have been put out since then. So yeah, it's great. I love it. I can't say enough good things.
I didn't even realize how much of the lore was just specific to the series until I was older, and I'd start mentioning katas or just mention something about the series or a place, and people would be like, "What are you talking about?" I went to the internet and this doesn't exist, or it's just like, "Oh yeah, no, it's a real thing," and it's just, and then it was you, Paul, that got me to understand truly the depth of it when you said it's really hard when you've been playing this your whole life over and over, all these different classes, all these other ways to play the game, all this lore, and here I got to start from scratch.
Right.
It's a long ways to go from the very beginning to the comfort of at least somebody like me who's played all of them in all the classes all the way up through to the 5th over and over. And right lately I've been obsessed with watching speed runs, because it's just a whole nother level of gameplay.
Oh yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, that's a good point. I guess I could add from experience with working with Nicole's that Lori, which was I feel like I diminished it a little by saying I hadn't played their games at the start of this episode, and then also in the same sentence was like, but I worked for them, which is a weird thing to do. So just to pay some quick tribute to the Coles, who I absolutely adore and was an honor to work with, I would say that Lori she's quite a genius. She's got like a Tolkien-like brain. Like she really, listening to her on the weekly meetups for Hero U, we jump on whatever it was called, Scratch or something, doesn't matter, whatever the meetup thing was, and listening to her go through the lore that she had built for Hero U was like, it was quite akin to Tolkien, like the depth and the layers and like the thousands of characters that she's keeping track of and knows that their attributes and personality traits and everything. So yeah, she's quite a genius when it comes to characters. And then to your point, Anna, that from an outsider who adores all these games and Sierra, etc., but hadn't played Quest for Glory as a kid, it can feel a little gatekept in a sense, because like everybody that loves the game will just riff for hours and use like hyper specific terminology and names, and there's an army of characters, and it's like, whew, like I don't know how to even penetrate this. I mean, I do. It's just start playing the first one. It's the simple answer, but anyway, yeah, it's quite Tolkien-esque in its lore.
Which makes sense, because Lori was, I think, primarily responsible for a lot of the writing in the third game, and it goes deep into lore in a way some of the other games just don't. Although I'm jumping ahead of myself. So yes, okay, so let's talk about it, because obviously most of us have something to say about the first game in particular. I know you've written a bit about this in the book. The music came in a little bit later, right? For this game.
Let's start
Where
at,
do you wanna?
at Heroes Quest EGA, and then
Yes.
if you don't mind, then we'll go to Quest for Glory VGA after that.
Sounds good.
So yeah, I was just saying that the music for this game came in and ended up being running music through the series. You said so. Mark Siebert ended up. This was one of his first. Was it one of his first games that he did for Sierra?
I believe he did Police Quest 2 before Heroes Quest. But yeah, it was one of his first, and the themes and motifs that he composed for it. I mean, the heroes theme, or the heroes march, which is the da 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 da. So you guys didn't know you were gonna get a musical, yeah. That thread carries through the entire series, at least in every game. Even Chance Thomas used it and kind of riffed on it a bit in Quest for Glory 5 too. Quest for Glory 5 as well. But yeah, and it was sort of a late ad, and I think it's really interesting because I when you play the game, when I played the game, the music fits the visuals so well. Like when you walk into Irana's Peace and you see those colors and you see how the screen is laid out, to me the music is like just, and maybe there's a little bit of like synesthesia going on here, I don't know, but just everything comes together so well, and I think it worked for him because he was able to kind of take things that were nearly complete and be like, okay, well this is how that should sound here. So yeah, it's great. I could go on about the music for Heroes Quest and Quest for Glory for days. It's my favorite.
Oh, I'm obsessed with it. That's why I jumped into it right away, because I use it as my ringtones. I use it as my chimes. Right now, I use the stable melody to wake me up in the morning. Like
Nice.
Everything about it is so exactly what it is supposed to represent.
Oh, totally. And I have a 21-minute loop of the Irana's Peace theme. I think I ripped it off of a YouTube video, but I have it downloaded on my phone, and I've used it to put my kids to bed, like as their bedtime music, since the day my 8-year-old was born. So it's
Oh, it's magical music too. And there's so many things about the game and even the music that you don't hear, you don't discover. Like I could be on my 74th playthrough and be like, what? I've never seen that. I had no idea that was there. But again, the speedrunning community is going through and removing some of those variables. Like, oh, here's all the things you didn't see and didn't know about. We're going to find them right now, and when we're going to exploit them, which is cool. Yeah, that's good. So outside of the music, this is a beautiful game. There was nothing else like this out there. You've taken a group of people, Lori and Corey, that were really into tabletop RPGs, and I guess their friend got them a job, and they got thrust into this lifestyle of making a game out of a game.
Yeah, it's very cool. The idea, I go into this in the book in quite a bit of depth, and Lori and Corey were super awesome and shared some of their like really early design documents with me, like things that are literally like sketches on like note paper from like 1983. But they had originally thought about creating like a role-playing game that would go in an arcade cabinet that you would play in like a video arcade or something, and creating the ability to save your character and come back to that game later if you wanted. And it never really took off, but those were some of the first ideas of what would eventually become Heroes Quest. And Carolee Hawksdaughter, who was a person who worked for Sierra at the time and who knew Lori and Corey through, I think, like Renaissance fairs and stuff. She said like, hey, you should, they're looking for an RPG, you should come and pitch. And they did. And Corey ended up working in like programming first, since that was kind of his background. And Lori ended up going in, getting started on Heroes Quest, and then they sort of, Corey eventually was like, I'd rather be working on Heroes Quest as well. And so I'm sure they've told this story before, and I hope I just got the details right, because I did it off the top of my head. But yeah, like, I mean, it's really neat. Like the ideas were there for so long, and they both, I think, just were like, you know what, we have a shot, we're gonna take it, and they took it. And Ken Williams was like, yeah, we'll invest in this, go for it, and here we are. So yeah.
Well, they did have a bit of a team, and it sounds like they had a really tight team, too. They worked really well together.
Yes.
At least most of them, other than one or two that might have left the project for various reasons. It seems like a pretty steady gig.
Yeah, I know there was one person who left the project like very early because I think for just personal philosophical or religious reasons, he didn't care for the thief being a hero, which, you know, okay, fair enough. But yeah, like, Jerry Moore and Ken Nishiuni and Jeff Crow. Jeff Crow did quite a bit of work on the art, and my understanding, the way Laurie's described it to me, is that the team sort of just sat in like a pod, a sort of section to the office where they could all just sort of riff with each other, almost like a writer's room or an artist's room or whatever. And so, if they needed stuff, they could just talk to each other right away. And it was a very like tight-knit sense of creative like energy, which sounds like a great, amazing working environment to me. So
yeah, it really does. I mean, I guess so. What they kind of put it together as if it was a tabletop game, and then figured out how to adapt it to computers. Or did they go straight into just making a game with just a basic concept? Do you know?
They had the order of operations, from what I understood, was that they created they had the idea at the back of their head. They created the game map first as to kind of what the world would look like, and then started sort of building out the RPG engine from that. But they knew early on that they wanted it to be a role-playing game, with choices and character development and Laurie said several times, and Corey too, that like one of the things that makes a great role-playing game is you have this character that you create, that's your own, that you invest in and you personalize, and that's your character, that's your avatar. And so the more connected you are with that character, the more you care. And that's why, like, for example, Devin Aidendale, which is a name that's used in the official strategy guide for the hero, isn't necessarily a canon name. It can be if you want, but it's up to you. It's up to you, the player. Like, you, the player, are responsible for, or in some part responsible for crafting the story in your head. And so when you choose your stats, when you choose what stats to develop, when you make the choices in the game, those are all things that build the story for you as you go along, which is a really, very much a tabletop role-playing experience.
You've noticed this is a spot of contention, haven't you, Paul, amongst Quest for Glory lovers, is the whole Devin Aidendale, which we did set straight, at least for ourselves, on a podcast episode when it was mentioned by our other host then, just to just double check about the name authenticity. So
I mean, that's just then. You shoehorned it in yesterday.
Yesterday
during
we had a meeting.
It was wildly inappropriate and uncalled for at the time.
You were laughing at me for it, too. I have to. It's making my nerd flag fly. I needed to do it. It just had to happen. I will shoehorn Quest for Glory into just about any conversation. Ask anybody in this house that also has never played the game, and they will tell you.
I believe, actually, I cite the episode you're referring to in the book.
Yes.
In that section.
Yes,
so,
you do.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I ended up speaking very, very late in the game with Paula Spizzi, who wrote the strategy guide, just literally just like a couple 3 months ago. And so here's a little bit of fun trivia.
Please.
Devin Aidendale's like a pastiche of one of her Dungeons and Dragons characters and one of her partners' Dungeons and Dragons characters kind of mashed together. So Anyway, that's where the name comes from. Pretty cool.
Awesome.
I love that. Another level of
yeah.
That's really cool. Yeah, I've got, of course, my trusty strategy guide right here next to me. I was never actually a huge fan of the story style strategy guide, so I'm more of a take me to the points list, please, Jeeves, kind of a strategy guide reader. But now as a keepsake, it's a beautiful book.
Yeah.
Such fussy fans. Okay, so we've got this game. You play through it as your character, whoever it is. It might be you, or if you're asking me, it's probably whoever you're dating or married to at the time. That's the name. Like my current hero's name is James, because that's my husband's name. So it's just kind of because that's my hero, right? If I'm with somebody, that's my thing. But you play your game and you play it all the way through. And at the end of the game, if you're successful and you rescue the town of Spielberg after, dealing with cheetars and Baba Yaga and just all sorts of craziness and fighting and magic using and thieving, you get to take your character and you get to put it on a disc. For me, it was a bright yellow, high density floppy disk at the time. And it sits there and your hero sits there twiddling his thumbs and he just waits for the next game. And I mean, unless you're in a situation where you've lost your inventory, if you lost your money through travel or through some sort of a problem, you're going to be starting up again with whatever you had before, which, I mean, they played around with that concept a bit in Mass Effect. They played around with the concept a little bit in Dragon Age, but like in no other game that I'm personally aware of do they do it quite in the way that they continue it in this series.
Yeah. I think they drew inspiration. It was from Wizardry. In the Wizardry series, you could carry your characters forward, but I don't think you're right. It's not quite to the extent that you could do it here. I remember playing somewhere around the same time, like Bard's Tale, where you could do something kind of similar, but you were in those instances you were really just dragging numbers, from one to the next. With this, it felt much more like.
Like, is he lucky? Does he barter with other people? Your decisions.
Yeah, the decisions, exactly. The decisions you've made. And so yeah, and it's beautiful because you can do this across the entire series. And your character, you have this, at the end, you have this epic that you've played with all these decisions that you've made, sort of building on each other and stuff. And yeah, you're left at the end with like, yeah, that was an amazing storytelling experience, an amazing narrative I just experienced. Wow. And then a year later or however long, you fire it up and do it all over again with, a different character and different choices maybe. So yeah.
It's true.
How does progressing your character forward work in modern day with DOSBox or ScumVM? Like, how do you go about transferring the character from game to game now?
About 10 years ago, it was really difficult.
Yeah. I can speak to ScumVM. They have actually made it pretty easy. They've done some like magic behind the scenes where in the first 4 games anyway, wherever you save your like the next game knows to look in the default directory that you saved your character in from the previous game. So you don't have to mess around with it. The issue is exactly. When it comes to Quest for Glory 5, which I've only ever run through my Steam version actually. You have to just like fish around for the directory wherever ScumVM put your file, and you can do it. It's a little complicated, but you can do it. So.
And does the game do you save your character like manually, or does the game just automatically update a character file?
You have to do it.
Yeah.
It's all on you, bro. You can decide to save it at the end of the game if you want to.
Okay.
And you can decide to import it into the next game if you don't want to. And then at some point, the internet came out with character generators. And, and I mean, there's other stuff. Like we'll talk about Suck Blue Frog and some other things as we get into the further games in the series. But this game, for the amount of ways you can mess with it, it is solid. Like, I'm not talking about number 4 right now. Okay, we'll get there a little bit later on. But especially in the first game, in the first 2, there's you have to work real hard if you want to mess with it. But you don't have to work too hard to end up in an unwinnable state, especially in the second one, which we can move on to now, because that's another beautiful. It's another beautiful entry into the series. You've still got your pixel art. You've got Shapir and Rassier, which is the backwards name of the first one, and you have some time limits, and you have a typing parser. I know, Paul. I'm getting you all excited here. But 2 is great. It's got a map in it. And okay, at least for me personally, I memorized the map in the game. I could get anywhere. I recognized all those little things, the mark on the wall, the broken window, the blind that's half closed. And you just figure out how to get around this massive city, because you start in a city in the desert that is really just a few seconds away from perishing at any moment throughout the whole first half of the game.
Yeah. It's really cool. And the feeling of going from like Spielberg Valley, which was, 35 screens, scarines, if you are using the Quest for Glory 2 measurement, or so, somewhere around in there. I saying that number off the top of my head without looking it up, and then you get to Shapir, where it's like you're in literally this enormous city, and like the sense of scope change is massive, and it feels like you're in this large living city, because you've got there's other NPCs who will like walk through crossroads in front of you and stuff. All the various plazas and bazaars are filled with other characters that you can all you can interact with all of them, which is super cool. So
chasing them around. Hey, talk to me.
Exactly. And it's really great. And then the desert, which is literally you spoiler alert, if you want, you can run from one city to the other, or journey there, but it's hundreds of screens to do so, and they did some really interesting programming tricks to make all that magic happen, because it only came on 9 floppy disks. So,
and in case people have forgotten, I haven't forgotten about the Quest for Glory 1 VGA. It's just it came out after the Trial by Fire, just a little bit later on. So anyways, we're going to go to that one next. But yes, the desert, the size of the city, the urgency of everything you have to accomplish, but the funniness, like Keep on Laughin' shop is the most amazing place in the world. Like just the music of that shop, the energy that you get from it, his sassy smarkiness, or the Saurus, just trying to find out that you can either pay a ridiculous amount for this Saurus or you can pay next to nothing for this thing. And it's all in how you negotiate with, Groucho Marx, technically, is where I first learned about him. But Ali Chica's Saurus lot.
Yep. Oh, it's so good. Actually, all the Marx brothers make an appearance at one point in the game. So or can depending on what you have. I think the Silly Clowns option has to be turned on to see Harpo, but
yeah, you always turn on Silly Clowns. I mean, you don't even know why you're turning it on, but it's just an option in the menu, Paul. You can just turn on Silly Clowns, and you don't know why you're doing it, but you just do.
Okay, I like that stuff. Yeah, that's good.
Which is better than, because in The Sims you have the sad clown in the first one. If your person gets sad enough, a clown comes out of the painting and he follows you around, making you sadder.
Wow.
Oh, why do we play these games, eh? But I mean, this. A lot of people cite this as being a difficult game, and I do feel like the second game in the series is either you love it, it's your absolute favoriteest game ever in the series, or you really aren't that fond of it. It's not really one for middle ground, it seems.
So I'll openly admit it is neither my favorite nor my least favorite. It's probably, if I were to rank them, it's probably number 2 or 3. I really enjoy it, and I will also openly admit that it is the first Sierra game I purchased a hint book for. So and
it's really hard to play, especially once you get to the second part, and it's difficult.
Yeah, it is. The Forbidden City especially, the log ride thing, forget it. Anyway.
Well, the timing on that bloody thing is just,
it's awful. So, I remember I you know what? You guys don't need to hear about how many times I tried to do it. That's not why we're here. Yeah, it was tough, and but I love the art. The level that they took the EGA art to in that game is astounding. It's so good. The night scenes in the desert are just they're
for
gorgeous.
that.
Yeah, and they can Like the music is great. They reused some Mark Sievert tracks, but Chris Brayman came in and did some music too, which was really cool. Like the Astrologer's theme is one of my favorites, and so yeah, like he did that one for example. And so anyway, all around, I like it. Heroes Quest, the EGA version. Totally 100% my favorite, but that's probably because I played it first.
Solid, man. That is number one on my list every time, and it's for the same reason. Yeah, absolutely.
Nice. So
was Quest for Glory 2? I'm not sure if it was Quest for Glory 2 or Gold Rush. Which one was the last AGI game? Or I'm sorry, the last EGA game.
Yeah. So Quest for Glory 2 was the last EGA game Sierra released, and Lori and Corey actually were offered a decision to delay the game and do it as a VGA game or just to stick with EGA. And they opted to stick with EGA because that's kind of how they originally planned to do it. Yeah, which personally I feel like worked out really, really well for them. The flip side of that is that King's Quest V shipped like 2 months after Quest for Glory 2 did, which may have contributed to the fact that its sales weren't quite as good as Heroes Quest's, but it also may not have. So, and King's Quest V really was the beginning of the VGA era for Sierra. So, yeah. But this one, man, if you're gonna have a final EGA game, this is it. Like it's a good game to have.
So yeah, number 2 is, like I said, it's not my absolute favorite. My favorite is every single game in the series in the order in which they were released, being also the order that I played it. So Quest for Glory 2 is my second favorite because it is the second game that I played. But I have the map, I have the box, I have it signed as with the other ones. And it is just an absolute masterpiece. And fun fact too, I mean, if you go to die in the desert, that's the one where the awful, no, that comes in the third one, isn't it? Never mind. Third one comes, the Awful Waffle Walker.
Oh,
or is it the second one?
Yeah. No, it's number 3.
Third one, right? Good.
Yep.
Okay. So you can die totally in the desert. And the desert, like every screen doesn't look the same. It's kind of like the map in the city. You can always kind of see like, oh, that rock looks kind of like a Saurus head, or this is the position of where the rocks are in this screen, so I know to turn left here. I mean, you can figure out how to guide yourself around, but the game also gives you a compass and a map, and it's also Ali Chica runs the booth. He's not the one that sells the Saurus. I needed to correct myself there.
Right.
He's the one that has the booth that ends up getting burnt down later.
That's right. Yeah.
He wants to sell you a duck. Want to buy a duck? Yeah.
Different Marx brother. Sorry.
Which is, you don't even realize that's where the jokes are coming from, is like Duck Soup and other like various Marx Brothers movies. But as a kid, you're just like, this stuff's just funny. So, anything else you want to say about the second one? Because otherwise we're going to take our character, we're going to save it on a disc, and then we're going to go back and play the first one again.
I think I'm good. Yeah, let's do it. Let's keep rocking.
All right. So we don't need to go through all of it, but they ended up putting out a VGA remake, much like they did with other series. And a lot of people that I know, this is their favorite. Like the VGA version, they don't like the parser. Maybe they're not big on typing, or this is the first game that they experienced in the series, and it is a little bit more accessible. So for a lot of people, this is their number one and only favorite first game in the series.
That is okay. That is a fair opinion. You might guess by the way I'm saying that.
That's how I feel too.
Yeah, it's an opinion I don't share, and you know what? That's okay. Like I think because my associations with the EGA Heroes Quest are so strong, my main, I guess it's not even an issue, but like the reason that I can't always get into the VGA remake is that the color palette feels too earth tony for me.
Thank you. Exactly right, because the EGA ones are always just more fun to look at. And as you guys were talking, I was just brewing in my head, I was going to say that Quest for Glory VGA and Conquest of Longbow both suffer from being just not fun to look at. It's like a lot of brown featuring green, and that's all you get, just so much brown and green the whole time.
Yeah. The I think because of the more limited color palette in EGA, it forced them to do more with it. And so, you have a Spielberg that's, where houses are pink, and like it's just it feels more vibrant to me.
Yes.
Whereas the VGA version just kind of doesn't, and that is 100% a personal preference. There's a lot to love about the VGA version. The sort of claymation-esque animations are amazing, for example. But like there's also just like, if I had to choose,
Yeah.
So yeah.
I agree. And what it is, the reason I was excited when it first came out and the reason I really wanted to play it is because, when you play the parser version, you miss some text because you don't know every question you're supposed to ask of every person. You simply can't know everything the programmer was thinking. So as soon as this game rolled up, I was like, I need to click all the things on all the things to hear any lines of dialogue I missed. So it gave you that ability it was almost like an extra secret hidden world in Quest for Glory that you never saw before, but it's also not one I went back to play again after experiencing it, not more than once. Not that version.
No, you're totally right. I loved that feature. When they came out with the fans created a VGA remake of Quest for Glory 2. They also included the conversation tree options, which I really appreciated. But yeah, kind of like you, I've played it, I don't know, 3 or 4 times. I mean, I played it through for the book. I still have to go back in and grab some screenshots, for example, for when the book is, finally off to the presses. And, but otherwise, like it's probably not the one I would choose just because it's not the one I know. So.
Yeah, I would agree. Well, one of these days we're going to do a comparison episode, right, Paul?
Yeah, no, for real we are. And speaking of that, Jason, do you have any any standout like comparisons, kind of fun facts sort of stuff between the two different versions?
So I actually think the most interesting fun facts about the VGA Quest for Glory is that there are a couple of Easter eggs that were added for the Mac version of the game that aren't in the core like DOS version. I was going to say Windows, but not yet. The core DOS version. But there's a person who went through the code, found them. There's one where like Elmer Fudd will pop up and appear, and there's another one where like one of the characters from the Dinosaurs cartoon will appear.
Nice.
And at the very least, the Elmer Fudd cartoon, there's a patch where you can patch your DOS version and add it in, so you don't have to like mess around with getting an emulator to run the Mac version. Which, having tried literally for days to do it unsuccessfully, is a nigh impossible. So
Dude,
impossible.
I've been there trying to emulate AGI or early Sierra stuff on the what was it, like Sheep or something. I forgot the Mac emulators, but they're a pain in the butt. Yeah,
Totally.
There's weird forked files or whatever where certain things like they just like disappear unless you zip them with like a certain kind of stuffing zipper. Yeah. Oh man.
Yeah. So, but I think that's actually kind of cool. Like it's a neat little thing they tossed in there, and it's actually even neater that somebody found it, ripped it out, and made a patch to put it in the DOS version so more of us can see it.
Oh, I do want to digress for one moment. The reason I did mention Suck Blue Frog, which might be occasionally of interest to people in the Space Quest world again, is it's the debug code in Quest for Glory 2 that I discovered many, many years later. And it essentially opens up the game so that you can it's like a giant cheat menu.
Yeah. Very cool.
There's actually a similar one in, I'm sure, I don't mean to like explain super obvious stuff. No. But there's a similar one in Heroes Quest as well, Razzle Dazzle Root Beer, which will open the same sort of debug menu, which is super cool. So yeah.
Yeah, it really does. It makes it unstable, and the game can technically crash whenever it wants to, but it's a fun ride on the way. I never was one for like perfect game. Like I know other people that play it for perfect game stats so that you can have the maximum amount at the end of each game. I was just, by the time you're done playing the first one and the second one, you're getting to the third one, your hero's already starting to get pretty damn badass at this point. He's pretty strong, and you can become in the second game you can become a secondary class. Sorry for the noise there. You can your magic user can become a wizard, or your main guy can start working on becoming a paladin. You want your thief to start becoming a chief thief. They all have their own little side quests, and so by the time you get to the third one, you might already start to be established as who you are. And this one, it is not pixelated. It is one of the hand-painted VGA games, and I liked it. But at the time when I was a kid, I found it didn't give enough support to the thief character, other than a very, very small bit of a side quest. There wasn't essentially much for the thief to do, but I've gotten over that, even though I bring it up every time I talk about it.
Yeah.
Oh, right. Yeah. So, yeah, we've got our save game on number 2. I just digressed briefly, went to the VGA, which we talked about briefly. Now we're going on to 3, which is, again, one that Corey was off working on, I think, a King's Quest project or something else at this time, wasn't he?
Castle of Dr. Brain.
That's what it was, the Dr. Brain game. Right. So they wanted a bit more of a serious tone for this one. This one was a little bit less jokey, a little bit less, slapstick.
Right. Yeah, it's actually, I love the tone and the story of Quest for Glory 3 a lot. I mean, there's stuff too. Like the thief doesn't have a lot to do, and I totally get it. It was, I think, contextually, and this is something we can kind of look back at, almost 30 years later, and say like, oh, okay, like it was really, I think, born of as a response to the Gulf War, and and Lori's talked about this, like, she has a very strong anti-war sentiment, and the undercurrent of Quest for Glory 3 is how wasteful and horrible war is for people, and that I really feel like that came through. It's a middle chapter, it's a middle section in a game. I've kind of tongue in cheek compared it to the Last Jedi of Quest for Glory games, and that may be a little too emotionally charged for some folks, but like it kind of is like there's a lot of like starting to see a lot of darker themes, like it's a hero sort of stepping up and taking more active control over things, over situations, and saying like, no, like this is that, I'm not being force fed like, oh, I have to save a city from these elementals, which is what happens in Quest for Glory 2. It's more like there's a war happening and I have to figure out how to prevent it. So and I really, really like that part of the game. So it's really, that to me is just something that really excites me about the third game. So yeah. And
the music, right? That was Rudy Helm. I think he did the music for this one, but my God, is the music ever, like, while you were talking, I'm running the music for the Hall of Kings is playing in my head right now. And just, it's so damn good.
It really is. Yeah. Rudy Helm did a great job with it. He, I think it was literally his first project with Sierra, which was super cool that they turned him loose on this. And like the opening theme, just with the drums and the pipes and stuff just slaps so hard. It's so good.
So good.
So Aubrey does the fourth Quest for Glory game. So I guess this is interesting. It's unfolding in a sense of where there's a different musician on each game so far, or at least up through 4. Is that correct?
Yes. The only game that, like, Mark Siebert, they reused a lot of Mark Siebert's music on number 2.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the African
music.
Yeah, he really just got the vibe of the African vibe. Everything about the cultures, the city, the tension when you needed it, just like the music in the forest when you're just walking into the next scene and there's nothing to kill you. You're just kind of walking through the forest on a scene, and it's all like you want to look over your shoulder. It's really, really atmospheric.
Yeah, it's so good, and yeah, it can't. The music of this series is apart from the art and the writing, I don't know. It's all great. The music is amazing. Yes.
I'd like to, at the end of the episode, I'd like to ask you both to each rank the Quest for Glory games for us at the end. But for right now, could you both give me your favorite score, your favorite music, basically from all of them? If you had to pick one, and then maybe you could give a runner-up if you.
Oh my God,
yeah.
that's so hard. Okay, you go. You can go first because you're the guest, or you can make me go first because you're the guest. It's up to you.
I'll go first, and I can ramble a little bit to give you time. My number one is Irana's piece, or the Magic Meadow from Heroes Quest, hands down. I use it to meditate to. I used it to for my kids, like bedtime music. It's so good. I would actually say the Astrologer's music in Quest for Glory 2 is my runner up, which I've also used to meditate to. Although it's a little different, like it's got a very different vibe. It's not quite as peaceful.
It's a little quirky.
It's quirky and sort of chaotic, but also very rhythmic and pattern based, which I really like. So yeah, those are my two.
Those are good. I'm going to, you know what, it's crazy. Outside of the ones I mentioned that I'm already using, and then my main ringtone, which is the hotel in the second game, is I really love the Leshy music in the fourth game. It gets stuck in my head so often. And yes, Arena's piece. And I like, and when you're doing the Dance of the Dryads in the fifth one.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that piece so much. Just the whole soundtrack for 5. I mean, we'll get there, but oh my God, it is a masterpiece.
Well, actually, on that note, could you both give me the game with the best music in general?
Ooh, the whole game.
Love a good unfair question.
It is.
It's a toss up between 1 and 2, in my opinion.
Okay.
But,
yeah.
I want to almost say 2 because there's slightly more variety of really interesting stuff. Like even the dervish music, the harem music is
I love the dervish
really
music.
good. Yeah. And there's such like a variety of stuff. Yeah, it's hard though. So yeah, maybe 2 by a hair.
I really like Eastern music, so would I probably like 2? Like, does it have a lot of Eastern sounds?
Oh yeah, you're in the desert, and it's got some very Eastern flair going to it. And then, like, for example, in the fourth one, you can have some, like, it's all like Russian, and then a little bit of like gypsy music as well in there, which is pretty cool. Gosh, I don't know. I like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Wow,
that's my answer.
Okay, we'll let it pass. A 5-way tie, fair enough.
Yeah, no, there's certain pieces in each one that just hit me, and as I said, I continue to surround myself in the music from them. And as I said, my ringtone being the stable music that's what gets me ready for everyday hard work, very little pay.
Right. Okay. Cool. All right. Well, where are you at game wise? Are we still on 3?
No, we're going to move on to 4 there.
Okay.
So yeah, we've saved our game at the end of 3. We've made peace, and everybody's happy. Want to split? Yes, we want to split and move on to the next game.
Before we do, sorry to interrupt. Before we do, Jason, do you have any like a standout fun fact for the third game?
A standout fun fact for the third game.
They did use voices for the first time ever, I think, digitized for this game. In the series, anyways. That was a pretty big deal.
Digital effects. The voices. I can't remember. The games weren't fully voiced until the fourth one, but they definitely started using digital effects. Well, actually, there were a couple of digital effects in Quest for Glory 2, but like really minor ones. I've got a great little fun fact or collection of facts. So there's the apothecary, Salim, who is sort of modeled on like a hippie, and we all know that he's got a big water pipe, and you can use the tinderbox to light the water pipe and get one of the most hilarious deaths in the entire series, if you wish, which I highly recommend trying if you haven't done it, because it's pretty funny. But people have commented, and I know Corey's addressed this before. People have commented that the Salim is sort of, is that Corey? He kind of looks like him, and he's not. It's based on a programmer from the team named John Wentworth, and who also worked with Corey on Castle of Dr. Brain, which is pretty cool. It's interesting to note though that Corey wrote Salim's dialogue, which is one of the very rare occasions where Lori let someone else write character dialogue in one of her games. So all of Salim's dialogue and jokes are Corey's, which I think is super cool. So yeah, there you go. And again, I guess if you haven't tried the whole water pipe trick, you should definitely do it. The death is hilarious.
I like it. I like it when they do deaths like that, kind of like Passionate Patty in Leisure Suit Larry in the jungle there when she smokes the spliff. So stuff like that it's beautiful. It's beautiful. Yes. Okay, so we've done all our thing. We've saved our character, our very powerful character, and we've gotten a little bit of respect by the end of this game. People are kind of like, oh, we know who this guy is. This guy is a hero. We expect things from him. And then all of a sudden, we wake up in Mordavia and we've lost everything. Everything we own, everything we have, except for our stats. And everybody that respected us is gone. And now we're just some schmuck in a cave.
I feel that.
Yeah, I'm going to change my LinkedIn profile to just some schmuck in a cave. That's pretty good. Yeah. No, it's cool. Shadows of Darkness, Quest for Glory 4 is one of probably my contender for like second most favorite game, because it's I've always been a huge fan of like horror. It's based very heavily on elements from like H.P. Lovecraft and Call of Cthulhu. The sense of isolation, of everyone kind of being against you, is just right up there with some classic horror role-playing tropes. And Lori and Corey both cited the original AD&D adventure, Castle Ravenloft, which if you're a D&D player at all, has been adapted and readapted over the years. Most recently is Curse of Strahd in 5th edition, but like they took a lot of influences from that. And applied it to this, and yeah, that it's so cool that sense of like, oh yeah, everything you literally have the clothes on your back and that's it. So and
nobody trusts you. They don't even like you. Like they don't even know why the hell you're there in the first goddamn place.
Right. It's the dynamic is great because there's a sense of like proving yourself, but not in a like, sort of like over the top or toxic way. It's just a proving yourself by doing good things along the way sort of way, which I definitely appreciate. It's one of the core messages of the series that I just on an existential level really like.
And it's you can still be somebody great even if you aren't the most amazing at everything. Like you can be entirely missing skills in your life and still be the hero and win it all. Or you can have what would be considered the wrong skills. Like I don't have magic. I can't even fight. All I can do is steal stuff, and yet I'm supposed to help this town. And actually you do.
Yeah. I think the whole like there wasn't enough for the thief to do in Quest for Glory 3 is kind of that's not the case here. Like every class has its own path. In some cases, some very cool, unique some really cool, unique like just experiences and subplots. And I love that the game really rewards you, I think, for multiple playthroughs in that regard as the different classes, because there's so much to see. There's a whole thief subplot, a wizard subplot that you just don't see as other classes, which is awesome. So yeah.
Right, and the game is beautiful. Mark Hudgens did an amazing job. He was the lead animator, and I think just absolutely like my heritage is Russian heritage, and everything about this game just spoke to the bone of my being. It's surprising it's not my first favorite, but it's not. It's my fourth. It's the fourth in the series. Does that mean I like it more or less than the third? That's not my rules. Okay, it's just the way it is. But I mean, the mystery, the intrigue, the love, the romance, having dreams at night, depending on where you are, different things happening. The domovoi, like the characters, Igor. I mean, this is the way that they made Baba Yaga out to be. There is the music, which is kind of like heavy metal. Aubrey Hodgkins is
Yes.
just absolute brilliant with this. Everything about it. It puts you right there in Mordovia and somehow makes it hard rock too.
Yeah. It's so that the music, Aubrey's music in this game actually had a huge influence on me, and like running horror role-playing games in D&D and other places, and it's so, and Aubrey came, they tapped him to do the soundtrack, and he came with I believe the Necrotar combat was the first track he wrote, and it was very different, and he said, okay, hear me out, and played it for Lori and Corey, and they kind of looked at each other and said, hell yeah. So like that was it, and like they were super into it, and that sort of like, yeah, it's horror, but like, let's play some rock because we're gonna kick some ass. Like, that sense is really comes through really strongly in this, and I love that, doing that with like in tabletop games and stuff for people. Even today, I will do that. So yeah, it's great.
It is, and for all the magic, I mean, I guess they ended up working with the SCI 32 engine, and the engine itself was buggy right from the get-go. So these programmers and other things would sit idle and then have work to do because all of a sudden everything would happen at once. And it was just not easy. And it ended up taking what was a beautiful, sentimental game, and us players would get it on the other side more excited than anything. And then occasionally that darn error 47 or one of the other bugs would catch us. For me, it was at the beginning when you first slid down in that first scene where the goo is. And that was where my game, and I didn't know you could mess around with the speed, or there was no patches available. I didn't have internet at the time. I just couldn't play this bloody game for years until I got the anthology on a CD.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's it's really unfortunate because the playtesting, like I think overall at Sierra around the time that this was developed and later, and there's a couple of anecdotes around Quest for Glory 5 I can get into around this as well. But the testing times for games were becoming shorter and shorter and shorter.
Yeah. And
because, like you said, their development was an iterative process because they kept shipping new versions of the engine. That meant that play testing came back, was less and less and less. So literally, I think Corey told me it was 1 week. So the the game was buggy as hell. One of the reasons that Quest for Glory 4 CD-ROM, was put out later was to try to fix the bugs, because and Lori, I have an email that she wrote to Sierra management at the time saying, this is not just a black mark on the Quest for Glory series, like it's a black mark on the entirety of Sierra that we shipped a game that has this many bugs in it, and what we propose to do to fix it is to have a CD-ROM version of the game, so can we have budget for that, please, so we can do this, and they actually signed off on it and said yes, which is great because it did fix quite a few of those bugs. But man, when this game first launched, I mean, I remember playing it and just being like, this is a buggy mess. So yeah, it's too bad because so much love and passion went into it. So
it definitely did, and it shows all the way through the game. I mean, it's sentimental. How many people, there's a point in the game where sad things happen, and how many people do you know that tell you that it's still sad for them to this very day?
Oh, absolutely. It's heartbreaking. Yeah, it's absolutely that scene. And no spoilers for for anyone who hasn't played it, but like it is it grabs you by your heartstrings and does not let go. It's great. It's so well written and well executed.
This is exactly why I waited so long to play it. I just wanted to make sure all the bugs were worked out.
Yeah.
Smart man. But yeah, number 4 isn't necessarily your thing because of the lack of pixels, but it is such a beautiful game, and the music, I think you would really resonate with it. And it's a great story, and that's really what it's all about.
And it's still pixel art. The games, they lose me when it goes full like Broken Sword cartoon, or obviously, well, we're coming up to 5 with the 3D.
Yeah, that's true. Number 5, I mean, that's a hard sell. I mean, okay, so you've done this amazing game. You've dealt with cults and you've rescued your whole city. You've gone on an artistic ride, and you didn't get soft locked. And by the way, a lot of the soft lock situations have been fixed on Scum VM. There's a really active community out there still doing things. For example, there's also a patch for Quest for Glory 4 where it fills in a lot of the missing details. There's 8,000 lines of text in this game alone. You've got John Rhys Davies, you've got Jennifer Hill, you've got Jeff Bennett, you've got, I think Baba Yaga was Susan Silo. There is a great cast in this game making it happen too, and if you put in the patch, you get even more of it. And a lot of the lines in this game are ad-libbed. When you're talking to the elephant farmers, for example, what you're reading on the screen and what they're saying are two different things. So unless you're playing it with voice, you don't even necessarily know what's what the true what's truly going on behind the scenes. It's really wild. And then they just had a bunch of people doing John Wayne impressions, and it all came together.
Yeah. It truly did. It's amazing, and the voice cast, like I can hear in my head right now John Rhys Davies going, "That didn't do anything," in his Welsh accent, and it's just like it's so perfect. So yeah, Anyway, yes, 100. Plus 100 emoji. Yes.
No, for real, solid. And so, okay, you've got your character, Tickety Boo, and even if you didn't have your character, I think that the fourth one had a fun bug, if we're going to talk about fun facts, where you could complete the fourth game and then play it again with your current stats. Right from the end. You can take your character and feed it right into the beginning. So back in the day, I would do that and make this this was before the character generator or anything else. I guess it was just a bug because none of the other games would let you do that.
That's right. Well, in there was something different about the importer in Quest for Glory 4 as well, because it would be like, it looks like you're trying to import a magic user. Is that right? And if you said no or whatever, then it's like, well, then what class are you? And you can choose whatever your class you wanted, I think. I'm pretty sure Shadows of Darkness was the one that let you do that. So that's actually, I've never tried the recursive importer. That's pretty great.
Oh, it's pretty badass. Like I said, now you can just make your super powerhouse character, but before, things like finding the suck blue frog or finding out things like that is a game changer. I'm running around the house, yelling at my dad, "Oh my God, you won't believe what I just figured out. I'm going to have the coolest, strongest hero ever," right? So these games inspire that kind of excitement, that kind of running around the house yelling something that you found out or figured out at the top of your lungs kind of excitement.
Totally.
And then your dad's all,
"That's crazy."
Yes. That was the perfect place to put that, Paul. Thank you.
I can put it down now. I've been holding it up to the microphone for an hour and a half.
So yeah, now there is a fifth game, and this game, if I thought that the third one was a divisive game, or the second one was a divisive game, the fifth one is the decisivist game, because it went into the realm of 3D territory. It changed sort of how the fighting goes, and a lot of people say, "Oh, well, the series was great. I just never played the fifth one," or "The fifth one is garbage," or there's somebody like me who says the fifth one was a beautiful wrap up to a beautiful series with beautiful music and beautiful art, and you can choose who to marry. Like this finishes off the series. You can and you can take your character and put it on another import disc for absolutely no reason, but it's
someday.
It's a great. Oh, right. Okay. Here's the time for me to put this in. This is my tattoo idea, because I don't have any. Is my yellow floppy disk, the big 5 1/4, and you've got like a thief and a magic user and a fighter, or whatever their second class would be, and they're all sitting on the edges of the disc, because the disc is kind of floating in space, and they're hanging their legs off the edge, and one of them's throwing a rock, and like the thief is playing with his lockpick, and one of them's fishing, and they're sitting here in this like quasi waiting reality zone for the next game, like in eternity, floating in space. And that's kind of what I visualize is them sitting there waiting and waiting and waiting.
I love that. That's fantastic. If you get that tattoo, I absolutely post a picture of it, because that is awesome. Yeah. I love
right. Maybe I'll need to get somebody to commission an artist for it first.
Oh yeah.
see how feasible it is. But yeah, the fifth game is beautiful. I absolutely love it. Now here's the thing: when I had kids in younger times and they were little, I really wanted to get them into the series, and I knew I had to do it right. So for my oldest son, who was born in '96, I pulled out Shadows of Darkness and I restored my game at the Hydra fight. And I was like, check out this badass game, man. And then you get into the end and you got flying dragons and stuff. And he's like, man, this is the coolest game ever. And he got obsessed with it because it was the first violent game I ever let him have. Haha. Mm-hmm. I also had a rule, even if you were out of video game time or you're out of TV time, you can play any game in the Quest for Glory series and it doesn't cost you anything. You can play it as long as you want. You can stay up past your bedtime. This is just kind of the rules I had in my house. But anyways, he got obsessed with Quest for Glory 5, played it loads and loads of time, ended up getting into speed running it. And even just recently when he was staying with me for a little bit, we played through it together so we could try to beat what is the newest speed run. I believe it's Renault in the speed running group, and he's got it down to like 18 minutes or 20. He's got it down to a science at this point. The fact that they can get and you know, just watching them do it, like throwing frostbite while you're running and hitting the open command, and just, oh my God, everything they do for that game is amazing.
That's incredible. I love it. Yeah, I'll chime in too, because it is. I know there's a lot of people in the community who are just like, this is not for me, and you know what? That's okay. Like, I get it. You know, one of the things I talked to Lori and Corey about when I was doing research for the book was like, you know, just kind of like, tell me the history, tell me why the drastic change. And, you know, the background is, and there's probably a lot of people, if they don't know this already, who are going to like go, oh my God. But the game was originally greenlit shortly after Shadows of Darkness launched, after Quest for Glory 4 launched. And there's some notes and design documents from, early 1994, you know, and it was originally going to be called Quest for Glory 5 Heroes Crown, which ultimately, obviously it didn't end up being called that, you know, but Lori and Corey ended up leaving Sierra, going to work on Shannara, and then coming back to do Dragonfire later. And by that point, you know, the SCI engine was sort of it was old news. Like, it was not a thing that they could keep doing to remain competitive. And so Sierra's motto had always been, we're going to try to stay on the cutting edge of technology, whether it's full motion video and Phantasmagoria, or, you know, like, I mean, for that matter, like 256 color VGA or MT32 soundtracks. And so they saw the early 3D as a chance to lean into this new technology and do something really cool with it. And I think I get that. I very much get that, and I see it in the final product, and I really appreciate what they did with it. And yeah, it looks different, and, you know, yeah, the color palette is sort of monochromatic in places, but like for the game it is, I feel like it's pulled off so well. Like, it's very well executed. The story is fantastic. I love being able to romance and you know, marry someone at the end. Like, that was a notion, I think, at that time, and maybe this is just my limited experience. You know, when I first played it in, you know, 98 or 99, like, I was like, wow, I've never seen that in a game before. That's cool. So, you know, yeah. And now it's like,
go ahead.
I was just going to say, now, like, you know, oh, well, you know, Baldur's Gate 3, well, of course you can, you know, or Stardew Valley. But it's like, but then that was brand new, you know? And so I like it. It's not my favorite. But that's, I think, largely more of a function of just, there's parts of it, because of its scale, that feel like you're doing a lot of clicking to run around, which, you know, okay, that's fine. Like, it is what it is. So
you just got to blow frostbite while you're while you're doing that.
Exactly.
But you don't have to choose like the good girl to marry, like, and you don't even have to make an ethical choice at the end of the game. I mean, you can really do things that would mess up the universe per se if you want to. I mean, it's not arbitrary.
No, it's I mean, it's really quite good, and like the level of choice and freedom in it is remarkable. You know, like it's just so good. I mean, there's a lot of I think it predates. It's probably, well, no, Fallout was 97, so they were about contemporary. But like there was, I think, a lot of that choice in role-playing games that was really coming through at that time, more so even than some of the early Quest for Glory games. And like, man, it shows. Like, it's so good. So.
And it's good too. The puzzles, like for example, when you have to disarm a trap. It's a lot of fun. When I was a kid, I had a system. I would draw a circle and I would have each space drawn in the circle because it'll show you figures in different positions and do like a little musical thing behind it. And so I would just draw a stick figure exactly in the shape that each one was so that I could refer to it. Nowadays, I'd take a screenshot, obviously, and then go through it that way. But it was well-designed puzzles all the way through in that one.
Yeah, absolutely. It was quite, yeah. Like, I think just, there was a real sense of the story being a very epic story at that point, which I also just really appreciated. Because, you know, you had, you know, in 3, there was sort of the war and the, spoiler alert, I suppose, the demons behind it. But and then in 4, you were, you know, again, spoiler alert, I suppose, you know, working to like prevent Avuzel from like, you know, coming out and doing bad things.
Damn it, Avuzel.
You know, that wascally Avuzel, you know, but in this one, like, it really feels like, yeah, the stakes are very high here, you know, like, and I love that sense. So.
And you know what's a fun fact too is you don't actually have to start the rites until you're ready to. So if you want to like, and I didn't know this until way later, you can just ignore that. Don't enter the rites. Go out there, battle, get your Pegasus water, and do everything you want in the game. And then do the rites whenever you frickin' feel like it and are damn well ready to do it.
Exactly.
I love that about it. Like, as a kid, you know, you're pushing yourself. You're like, oh man, I got to get 1,000 drachmas. I got to get into the rites. Like, you don't realize you can just like, and the order of operations. And when you're doing the rites, like messing with it, like say you're the fighter or even a thief and you just take everybody else's medal that they're supposed to win. Like, you don't just have to do your own challenges. You can take away everybody else's challenges.
Well, and if you're a fighter or a paladin, maybe even, I think that's like freeing all the villages, for example, in the one right is actually, I think it's on your points list. So to get 1,000 points, you kind of have to be a bit of a jerk. So, yeah, it's fine.
And I mean,
it's good.
People die, and if you don't notice it happening, there's different things. If you don't catch events as they happen, different things turn out, like all the way through the game, decision after decision. You can hear the excitement. Just talking about it. I love it.
Yeah, for sure.
Hey, Paul, how's it going?
Good. So I've been brewing on a question. Did Quest for Glory 5 where'd it go? There it is. Did it end with at least a vague promise of another one? Like, you know, Space Quest 6, in other words, like we really needed a 7th. Did we need a Quest for Glory 6 by the end of 5?
So no, in my opinion, no. I think it ended perfectly. Like,
your hero got married. What more could you like?
Yeah, and you could decide to take the crown or not. You know, marry who you want or not. And to me, that's like the perfect resolution. And you know, there've been other games like Heroine's Quest. It's not like really a sequel, but it's clearly inspired by, you know, Quest for Glory and has references to Quest for Glory in it. You know, but like, if anyone were to ever do a Heroes Quest, or excuse me, Quest for Glory 6, you know, I wouldn't want it necessarily to be the hero from the first 5. And this is my opinion purely. I've always thought of it as sort of like the third act of Beowulf, where at the end of the poem, you know, the great warrior is sort of old. He's been around the block. He can go out maybe for one last like adventure, but it's going to do him in. And he needs the next generation to come with him. And I've always thought it might be interesting to play as that next generation when, you know, kind of alongside a very aging hero. again, one person's opinion. However, if anyone out there at Microsoft is listening, consider that a game pitch.
Please do. I just want to put my characters into something. That's the tease. It can close off as much as it wants. It can resolve everything as much as it wants. It lets you save your character.
It does. It does. So.
Okay, I see.
And there it is. It's not just playing the game as a certain class and developing to another class. It's about playing the game series, and you can mix it up. You can be a thief that does a bit of magic. You can be a fighter that does a bit of magic, or you can try to be a paladin that still steals some stuff. Like, there are so many different combinations that there's no one way in one life that you can try and play all of them.
I think I'll play it.
You should.
You've convinced me. This has been a hell of a pitch, you guys. I appreciate you taking your time out of your day just to get me to play it. That was really nice of you, and it worked.
That's exactly why we did this. Very much so. So yeah, I mean, okay. So the reason that we've been talking about this, and Jason keeps mentioning book. Let's talk a little bit more about that. What book, where, when, how, like, what's going on here?
Yeah, all excellent questions. So a few months into the COVID pandemic, we'll start. That's a good way to start any story. So there's a book publisher called Boss Fight Books who do like really cool, like in-depth books on one video game. And I was like, okay, they put out a call for pitches. And I was like, okay, well, I'll pitch him Heroes Quest and see what happens. And I did. I sent him a sample chapter, which a really, really early version of the Heroes Quest chapter. And the editor there like wrote me a very nice email back. And he's like, look, you're a great writer. I have been a professional writer for 20 years, full time for, the last 12. And so I had that going for me. He's like, look, you're a great writer. We don't feel like enough people will buy this, so we can't.
What? Is this a niche thing?
I know, right? And so he's like, and so I'm like, okay, that's fair. And so my thought was, well, you know what? Maybe I'll just kickstart the book. Maybe instead of just keeping it to the first game, I'll write about the whole series. And so I emailed Lori and Corey, and I had corresponded with them back when I was doing like a Let's Play of Quest for Glory, like in 2008 maybe. And so it was a while ago. And so and I'm like, hey, I was thinking about doing this project. Like, what do you think? And they're like, okay, yeah, like let's do it. And so I interviewed them. I was on the phone interviewing them like once a week for more than a year. I talked to a whole bunch of people associated with the games, did all these interviews, collected a bunch of documents. Wrote the book. I finished it almost a couple of years ago now. The first draft. I've been editing and tweaking and adding since then. But I not long after I finished it, I pinged another publisher who I'm not allowed to name, but let me just say they publish very nice high-end art style books about classic video games. And we agreed, and they said, yeah, we want to publish your book. And I'm like, awesome, this is great. So they said, we need to basically get the rights to use screenshots and art, because I have like concept art and stuff that technically is Sierra IP. And so they were, they're like, so we'll do that. So we started a conversation with Activision because they owned the rights then. And in the middle of all that, Activision was bought out by Microsoft. So everything changed. And now we're corresponding with Microsoft. And there's a person who works for Xbox who used to work for Sierra actually a long time ago, who's been kind of helping move things along a little bit. But we there's a contract over there. All we need to do is have one of their lawyers go, yep, that looks great, sign it, and we're good to go. That could happen tomorrow. That could happen in 2 months. I don't know. But it's been a very long, slow process. And even for someone who's pretty familiar with like how the machines of, legal contracts and stuff can work in game companies, it's frustratingly slow. But my hope is that once it's all done, the end product, again, from a very high end, art, art kind of art style book publisher, is going to be really, really good. And like I said, I have about 215,000 words. There's a ton of stuff in there, like just absolutely bonkers amount of stuff. There's interviews from people like artists and game designers, a prominent comic book writer and artist who was inspired by Quest for Glory. So it's like there's so much cool stuff. I wish people could just see and share, and I could share with them. We're not quite there yet, but we hopefully will be soon. So I would love to get it out tomorrow if I could.
Of course. Well, with creative endeavors do take time, Paul. We've noticed that ourselves, haven't we? Aye. So any last thoughts specifically from you, Paul? We've already gotten your last thought. You're going to give it a go, and I'm going to hold you to it annoyingly, right?
Yeah, with an asterisk mark about the annoying. Yeah. No, I am. You'll see. You will all see. But I do want to get you guys to rank the series for me real quick at the end.
Okay.
Jason, let's go to you first, being the guest. Where would you put them in order?
1, 4, 2, 3, 5.
Okay. Anna, what do you give it?
If I have to say outside of my usual answer, which is all of them in the order they were made and the order I played it, if I gave that up for a minute, I guess I would have to say 1, 2, 4, 5, 3.
Okay.
Cool.
Yeah. I'm noticing more love for 5 than not. Yeah. That's
I wish the world was just like this chat.
Same here. I look forward to the comment threads of like, they said what? Yeah, or they said what? Like, yeah. So, yeah.
It's like a Mask of Eternity. A lot of people say it doesn't even belong in the series, but I do not believe it's the same. It is compatible in every bloody sense of the word. It's just a graphics choice. It's like, do you want to go back and play Alone in the Dark again? Maybe not, but I bet the first time you played it, you thought it was pretty darn cool.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yep. Yeah. Nailed it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, well, cool. Thank you so much for coming on and chatting about it. We are all looking forward to hearing about your future projects. And we actually had the cool chance of meeting you when we were at the Adventure Game Fan Fair, which was really quite a cool thing. And you gave me some coasters and a sample of your book. And the coasters are for, of course, Quest for Glory 1. If you go to the pub and you order the dragon's breath and you drink it, there's detrimental effects. So, of course, it would be themed on that idea.
Oh, Jason, is there anywhere people should go to follow you or to get updates on the book or anything that
yeah, so I used to point people toward my Twitter account, but I have abandoned it for reasons. But I now have a Bluesky account that has fewer followers, but I'm QFG Book at Bluesky. However they do their thing. Yeah. If you search for QFG Book on Bluesky, you'll find me. Okay. So, yeah. And there actually is a website as well, which is just qfgbook.com. Where you can see there's a list of people I interviewed and fun stuff like that. But yeah, unfortunately, there's not much there since we're still in contract hell. So
fair. Okay, and to listeners, we will link that both the social and the website in the description thingy. It's not really below because it's a podcast, but I want to say description below.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you, person who does that sort of work.
Thank you both so much for having me on. I sincerely appreciate it. This has been a blast talking. Yeah, I can talk about Quest for Glory for days, and I have.
Oh, yeah, so. And we can, and we will. Yeah, I mean, hell, that would be... All I want to do now is next time we go to a get-together is just, get together with all of the Quest for Glory fiends. You might even become one of them, Paul. I'm not ruling you out now. And go into, I don't know, kind of like one of the restaurants we went into in a back room where it's all kind of cavernous and all sit there and, just obsess over Quest for Glory. I think Sean Myers, there was a few other people out there, and we'd never leave. The restaurant would shut down. They'd be like, forget it. You guys are too nerdy. We're just going to leave you here. We don't even want to interact anymore. They stopped bringing drinks hours ago. It's nice. A whole thing.
Love it.
All right. So again, thank you so much for being here to support the show. That's you on Patreon. We appreciate all of you very much. And in the True Believer Patreon tier, we have to say extra special thank yous to Gareth, Mick, Michael Council, Brian Manown Chapman, who, yes, I did read your name out before, and that wasn't the first time. So I'm reading it today knowing that I've read your name before, commented on the YouTube video, and really appreciate your support. Jay Holmes, Jeffrey Couch, Mark Fillion, Tim Ellis, thank you, and everybody else that's out there on Patreon. We would probably still continue to do this, but it certainly wouldn't be as well produced, and I wouldn't have fancy things like nice microphones and things. So thank you very much for that. As well, you can find us if you want to talk about Quest for Glory, obviously, because there'd be no other reason, on Twitter at CGG Podcast. You can always message Paul and tell him how much he needs to play the game at the Phantom Fellows on Twitter. You can also find him on thephantomfellows.com. That can lead you to the game, The Phantom Fellows, which is a game that was just released really not that long ago. And maybe you haven't heard this podcast before, but it's a game that Paul released, and it's about a ghost and his guy, and they go around and solve all sorts of mysteries. It runs over 7 days in the town of Elderberry, which is obviously in Colorado. So, not Elderberry like in the Shadows of Darkness games, Elderberry. There's various in-jokes that Paul doesn't understand, but that's okay. But to go check out the game, there's a guide too. There's a full guide that explains everything you need to do step by step, or just like some instruction guide. You can get the soundtrack separately on thephantomfellows.com. So there's all sorts of stuff out there. Steam, GOG, Fireflower, itch. You can find it, tell your friends, buy it as a Christmas gift, buy it for yourself on another platform. As a gift for yourself, and feel free to leave a review. Even a couple of words help, just to get it up out of the we don't have enough reviews to have an opinion of it yet. So get out there and do that. That would be awesome. Send us an mail at cggpodcast.com. We are also on Facebook as a page and a group. We're on Instagram and YouTube. Thank you so much for listening.
And to everybody, have a Merry Christmas. To all my brews, have a Happy Hanukkah, New Year, all that stuff. Don't do murder.
That's crazy.